Well, to the budget now, as the federal government tabled its budget implementation bill this afternoon. But unlike the drama of last night's confidence vote on adopting the budget itself, today's proceedings were quick and without much controversy.
Okay, adopted. Je déclare la motion adoptée avec dissidence.
So adopted with some dissent.
And with that, the implementation bill will now make its way through the House and be debated in the weeks to come. As for the governing Liberals, well, they now have the job of selling their budget to Canadians, which, according to Léger, may not be that easy. Initial reaction to Carney's first budget has been muted at best, with only 30% of Canadians giving it a positive review, 37% giving it a negative review, and 33% uncertain of what it will mean. Well, with more on the impressions of this budget, we're now joined by Andrew Enns, Executive Vice President for the polling and marketing firm Léger. Andrew, thank you for the time.
Great to be joining you, Michael.
So, we began this with the general impression that you found with this budget. And as we saw, it was not all that great. But it seems the picture for the government does get better when you ask Canadians to share their impressions on specific priorities. Can you walk us through that?
Well, sure. As you touched on, the overall impressions of the budget were pretty modest, but we did drill down into a few of the specific I would say, the highlights of the budget, and there you do find certainly some positive things to build on. Obviously, things with respect to reducing the immigration numbers was very popular. Some things with respect to housing, things on defense spending had some good support, well over 50% in terms of some of those specific measures. And I think that certainly gives some specific topics for the government to build upon. Obviously, the budget's now passed, so they can turn their attention to getting out and communicating the budget probably a little more vigorously.
Yeah, and I'll get to that in a second. But when you talk about communicating this budget to Canadians, I also want to break down a little bit of the regional response here, because when it comes to this budget, the government may encounter some challenges selling it to the regions right across the country. And to that, I'll get to Alberta and Saskatchewan in a bit. But in the areas of this country, in the regions of this country where the Liberals built their government, talk to us about the impressions of the budget and the challenge that this government has there.
Well, I think the one thing I'll say sort of interesting about the budget is that there's no massive holes regionally with respect to budget support, nor is there any obvious areas in the country where this budget was really well received. I think honestly, when you think of Atlantic Canada and Ontario, for example, key markets for this for this government, the support on the economy, on defense, reducing immigration, they've got good support there to build upon. But it's not that overall picture. It's still pretty lukewarm and modest in those places, and I think they've got their work to do in those areas. In terms of getting out and selling the budget a bit.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to Alberta and Saskatchewan?
Well, what I'll say about Alberta and Saskatchewan, I mean, they're probably a little bit lower in terms of support for the budget. The support for the budget does break along partisan lines, and in Alberta and Saskatchewan in particular, the Conservatives have a stronger sort of vote preference, and so that does color a little bit of the support. But I'll certainly go back to the last few budgets of Justin Trudeau, for example, in 2023-24, like those were very poorly received in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Yes, partisanship played a role, but just generally, like the tone of those budgets just did not sort of sit well with those residents in those provinces. I think Mr. Carney, Prime Minister Carney, does have a little bit of a better, does come at this with a bit of a better position than his predecessor in Alberta and Saskatchewan. I think there's and I've said this before, I believe that there's still a measure of the benefit of the doubt that is being afforded Mr. Carney, and I think Albertans and Saskatchewan residents are prepared to see, can he deliver on some of these things? Will he follow through, for example, on the immigration promise? Will he deliver on some of those major projects, for example, that were also a big aspect of this budget? So I think he can go into those provinces. Not, I would say, with don't expect standing ovations everywhere where you go, but I think he should get an audience that's prepared to listen to him.
You're prepared to listen. So if you were to find a path forward for this government, how do they sell this budget?
Well, I think honestly, I think Canadians were pretty clear. We ran a poll. They didn't want an election. They want to actually see some action by this government that was just elected, literally a few months ago. I think for Mr. Carney and the Liberal government, I think the best path forward for them is to start rolling up their sleeves and starting to work on elements in this budget. Find some of those things that are more on the short term. Reducing the size of the civil service was another area that was fairly popular with respect to how Canadians felt about it. Let's see some action there in terms of making some progress. They announced a lot of what was in this budget was announced in the weeks leading up to the actual budget day. So I think for Canadians, I think they hearing more announcements of what they plan to do probably is not as welcome news as opposed to some actual tangible progress on some of these areas.
Andrew, thank you for this. I really appreciate the time.
Terrific. Enjoyed speaking with you, Michael. Have a good rest of your program.